Hello everybody, Ben here at Glide, just filming video 2 in our 5-part video series where we are creating an entire workflow system from scratch. Video 2 is all about the links between certain users and our clients and jobs, so covering all topics around staff allocation. So why would you want to concern yourselves with these settings? Well, first I want to clarify that with Glide, you don't have to do this. Say if you're in a small office with not too many users and you all just want to see everything, all of the jobs, without worrying about who owns or is responsible for which jobs, that is by default how Glide works. So all users can see all jobs. So for example, on any of these widgets here on a dashboard, when they're filtered to overall, you're going to see absolutely every job in the system. So really, video 2 is certainly something we would encourage you to follow. A lot of the more powerful Glide functionality is based around this sort of thing. But if you're sat there thinking, well, you know, there's 5 of us and we all just want to see a list of every single VAT return in the office, you could potentially start off from a position of doing nothing and then just adding this in as and when you decide you wish to. So what are typically the objectives that people are looking for? Well, first of all, we mentioned a moment ago that a user is going to log in, they're going to see all jobs. More often than not, that's not what they want to see. They want the list of jobs filtered down to those for which they have some degree of responsibility or some interest in. So for example, here I might be a manager of the VAT department and I might have 100 clients, but overall there might be 500 clients in the practice and there might be 4 of the managers. So if I just want to be seeing my clients or my jobs, then I need to be linked to those clients and jobs. So the first objective is to ensure that people that have an interest or responsibility for a job are hopefully automatically linked to that job when the job creates. How do you become linked? Well, you need to occupy a job position, and we're going to talk through that in detail in this video. By being in a job position, you can filter your dashboards in the way we just kind of discussed. And secondly, a lot of the workflow actions, for example, making automatic changes in the job holder, sending email or SMS updates or internal alerts, these all have options for you to target a job position. So once you've set up your job positions and you've got people in them, there's lots of ways you can kind of leverage that data and make more and more use of it. So that's the first objective, get people into job positions. The second one is all about the job holder. So whereas you might have multiple job positions on a job, so for example, a year-end set of accounts or audit, you might have a partner, a manager, an assistant manager, you might have someone preparing it, you might have a different reviewer, you might have someone dedicated to the corporation tax side in a management role, in a preparation role. You know, typically there's maybe 1, 2 or 3, but you can have up to 16 job positions configured on every workflow system. And in the more complex examples, there might well be 5 or 10 people interested in a job. And it's great that they can all filter their dashboards to see these jobs. The job holder is different. The job holder is the one person that is currently responsible or most responsible for the current stage of the job. It is the Glide equivalent to a personal to-do list. It's of use to the user because as well as seeing lots of widgets that are reporting upon either all of the jobs or their portfolio of jobs, the jobs held is very specifically saying these are the things you should be doing in this order. I've got a couple of those widgets here. There's no jobs in them at present. So on a simple job like the VAT V2 that we're currently configuring in this video series, you would just have one job holder. Video 5, we're looking at the concept of multiple subsystems, and worth noting that where you have a workflow system with more than one subsystem, you will have a job holder for each. But in this video today, we're just going to have one job holder per job. Now, you can just change the job holder manually, and sometimes that's necessary. Say if you hand a file for review, and the process is simply that you need to find someone in the office that can check your work, you're going to need to tell the system who you've given that job to so that the system can set the job holder accurately. But most of the time, this can be automated through workflow actions. And that is what we're going to look at today. Let's have a look at an example to further highlight the implications of being linked to a job, being in a job position, and being a job holder. We are logged into Glide here as a user called Joanne, and here I have an example dashboard called Accounts and CT. It's showing a few widgets for the Accounts and CT workflow system. This workflow system actually has two subsystems. There's a accounts part to it and a corp tax part of it. And I have a jobs held widget for each of those here. So currently, both of these widgets are filtered to overall, and we can see that there's two corp tax jobs live in the Glide system, and there's 3 accounts jobs live in the Glide system. If we were to change this filter level to linked, then that goes down to 0. Joanne is not linked to any corp tax jobs, and the same is true of accounts. Further, if we were to change the filter level to held, it would be 0, and the same here. And we kind of know that because on the jobs held widgets there are no jobs listed. So the held filter level would show the exact same jobs that are in the jobs held listing widget. Let's pop this back to linked, because what we can do now is we can make a change that will cause the job to be linked. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to a job card here. Just looking at this 31st of March 2020 Accounts and CT job for Cairngorm Mountain, we can see that we have 4 job positions: partner, manager, preparer, CT preparer. So as I was saying a moment ago, you can have up to 16, you can call them whatever you like. Joanne Whiting, JW, does not currently occupy any of those, and therefore she is not linked. And furthermore, the job holder for accounts is BN, and the job holder for CT is BN. So she's not holding either of these jobs either. So first of all, let's put her in a client position. I'm just going to make the standard manager position be set to Joanne. Going to hit save. We'll talk about this later, but that will also update any active jobs. So if we come to the March 2020, we'll see that Joanne is now the manager. And if we go back to our dashboard and hit refresh, we will see that because these are set to linked, we now have 1 job in here and 1 job in here. So the accounts is on awaiting information, corp tax is on accounts prep still in progress. There we go. And if we were to drill into either of these, we would see that it's our Cairngorm March 2020 job that's filtering through to those widgets. But still, if we were to change these to held, of course it would say 0. So let's change these to held, and then we'll make Joanne the job holder, and we'll come back in a moment. So most changes in job holder would be automated, but I'm just going to do this manually for the benefit of the video. There we go. And I'm going to come back, I'm going to refresh the dashboard, and we can see there's 1 job in each of those, and there's 1 job in the jobs held. So hopefully what this shows is that if you imagine this on a far bigger scale, for any particular user, they can see everything. You know, you can toggle this whenever you like, or you can have the widget twice on the same dashboard filtered differently, or thrice filtered differently. Or some people have different dashboards. Some people like to have a kind of My Portfolio dashboard, an entire office dashboard. Worth mentioning as well that if you activate multiple offices on Glide, you will have an office level filter as well. But that just shows how the default is that you see everything, but it's very, very easy to drill into either your clients that you're responsible for, regardless of who's currently working on the file that's linked, or the jobs held, which is very much your personal to-do list. So next, I just want to take a moment to talk about the different options you have for your client level information. As we discovered a moment ago, the key objective here is to get your users into the appropriate job positions. So that might be, for example, a manager position, a partner position, or a preparer position, or anything else you've configured. On some occasions, those positions will be populated during the course of a job. It'll only be at that point in time that you know who you want to occupy that position. But more often than not, this information is kind of what you'd call permanent information. It is stored on the client record. It might change from time to time, but it is essentially permanent. A member of your team might manage a client for 5 or 6 years. So you certainly don't want to be manually entering or filling that manager position. So the information you store in your client record allows you to automate the population of these job positions. And there are 2 types of field here, and they operate subtly differently, so I want to talk about each of them. First of all, you have the standard partner and manager fields. These are on the summary tab. They exist on all Glide systems by default. You actually can't even delete them. You don't have to use them, but you can't get rid of them. These are set up to operate in what we consider to be a fairly typical way with minimal setup required. So what do I mean by that? Well, they assume that you might have 1 or 2 tiers of management, client management, who are responsible for the overall client. So if you were to create a Glide system today and put someone in the manager role, they would automatically populate the manager job position. You can rename the job position, but defaults to manager on all jobs. So that manager would be linked to all of your workflow systems you have set up, both the Glide templates and any new ones you create. It's great for that scenario where you do allocate responsibility for clients and someone owns the client. Say if they're not interested in just one workflow system, you can delink them, but it works that way around. It defaults to being interested in and linked to everything. But of course, it doesn't always work like that. Firstly, you might have partner, manager, or other roles where responsibility is more functional. So you might say, right, we have a VAT manager, we have a management accounts manager, we have a payroll manager. And in those cases, if you're putting someone in that position, you don't want them to automatically be linked to the year-end accounts. So that's the first reason why you might create extra fields. Second reason is simply that there's only 2 of these fields, and you might have more tiers of people involved. You might have an assistant manager, you might have a few of those functional type managers. So if you need more than 2 levels, or if you want positions that are just linking to 1 or a few select workflow systems, you need to create new client level fields. And you would do that by coming to either the config edit additional client fields, where you can create staff type fields. They would appear on the summary tab, or you can go to, if you want them to appear on a particular workflow tab, you can go to edit workflow systems, drill into the system that you would like the field to appear on, and you're looking for custom client fields and it's staff type. It's worth noting that even if you choose to put a field on, say, the management accounts tab, that field can still automatically populate a job position on any other number of workflow systems. With these new positions, you would then manually decide which workflow system job positions you would like them to automatically populate. And we'll look at that in an example in a moment. But those are your 2 types of client positions. You've got your kind of default standard ones, you've got your custom ones, and that's a brief intro into how they work. And wherever a position is, like we say, client data, it's known in advance, you really do want to have that allocation done on a client level. It means jobs will create and people are already in positions. Make everything automated where possible. You only want to be manually populating a job position where it is simply unknown at the point of job creation. The classic example there, which is reflected in the Glide templates, is that we will always have, and I'll talk through how we do the Glide templates, we always have a regular staff member, sometimes called regular preparer position, on each tab, and this will automatically populate the preparer position on the job. For that position, we then also create a job field, because if you don't use that client field, or if it's empty for a particular client, you can simply come along and allocate it after the job's been created. And the preparer position is the typical example there. Maybe you need to know when the info comes in, who's in the office, who's available, who's got time. So it doesn't lend itself to defaulting to a client position. Whereas if you say, perhaps this happens a bit more with tax returns, if you try to keep the same people doing it each year, then you would want them in the regular preparer position. And the nice thing is you can have a complete mix. Say if you've got 200 tax return jobs and 100 of them, the clients really want that same person, just put them in the client field. For the other 100, just leave it blank. It's going to start out blank and you can fill it in when you know who's doing it. So those are client positions. Okay, next let's talk about the job holder, and specifically how do we change that job holder automatically as a job progresses. And for this it's definitely best to jump back into our live example, our VAT v2 workflow that we configured in video 1. And what I've done here is I've actually got a screen grab of the visual configuration of the workflow that we did in the last video. And what I have done here is I've just made some notes as to who the job holder should be. So what we can see is the job creates, and when it creates, I want to set the job holder to be the admin team. I was keen to demonstrate in the video concept of setting a team to be the job holder. That's why I've done it. But quite often you do see practices that until such a time as the actual full information is ready to be processed, they like to keep all kind of chasing, requesting, chasing info, missing info within the kind of admin team to keep those accounting teams actually free to work on chargeable activities. So that's a nice one there. We're going to set the holder to be the admin team when the job creates. Job creates goes onto the stage to request info. Notice that we don't set who owns a stage. That's not how it works in Glide. What you do is you have actions that on a step you can decide to change the holder. So if it doesn't need to change, so for example when we click info requested, I still want it to be of my admin team, you don't have to do anything. Once it's set to the admin team, it's going to stay with them until such a time as we have a workflow action in the configuration to change it, or until it's changed manually on the job card, should you choose to allow that. So coming down here from the awaiting info stage, we have a button that says info chased. We're not seeking to change the job holder there. It's only when they click info received that I have said I want to set the job holder to the preparer position. Now, as we were saying a moment ago, it's really a clever way of setting this up is to have the preparer position default to a client field. That could be your manager position, or more likely one of these regular preparer client positions. And if you don't have a regular preparer, just leave it blank. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to say if it's blank, I'd like it to go into the job pool. That'll give us a good chance to look at the job pool, see what that can do. Job goes onto the stage to start job. Now, at some point we'll click the button job started, and all I'm doing here, I still want the job to be with my preparer, but I am going to put in a traffic light workflow action to basically insist on a preparer being allocated at this point in time. That is because I don't want jobs on the stage, job in progress, that don't have a preparer, or more specifically don't have the preparer as the job holder. And the reason I do that is because then I can relax knowing that my members of the team have a dashboard, they have their jobs held, maybe they have some of the other widgets filtered, either to linked or to held, and all of my jobs in progress are appearing on someone's dashboard. Of course, people can still see that job if it's got no one in the holder, but it's just a little bit tidier to ensure that these fields are fully completed. So at some point then, the preparer will click handed for review, and at this point in time, I'm actually going to pass the job to a position called reviewer. That's quite cool because we don't have that one set up. In fact, we don't have the preparer set up because this is a brand new workflow. But this allows me to demonstrate defaulting a position to the manager, but with the ability to change it without changing the manager on the client. I've seen this in practice where people say, right, well, who reviews the job? Typically the manager, but it could be someone else. You know, if the manager's not in, they can give it to a different manager. And you don't want to change, you don't want to ruin your data set by just changing who the manager is because of this. So it's nice to have a separate dedicated position called reviewer. In addition, by putting the reviewer in a job position, they will then remain in that position for the rest of the job. It allows you to pass the job back to them should that be necessary later on. So we're on the to review job. If we click issues to clear, we're simply going to pass it back to the preparer. If we click OK to send, we're going to the admin team. And that's the final change. All these final steps here I'm saying are done by the admin team. So let's jump in and configure that. So first of all, on creation, we wish to set the job holder to be the admin team. First things first, I shall need to create that team. So if I go to config and manage staff teams, I'll just go create new team and give it the name admin team. What I can then do is, from my list of users, I can drag people over to put them in that team. Just to explain the reason why you might choose to have a job held by a team, this is beneficial where several users work as a team, meaning that they do not allocate specific jobs to one member of the team or the other. So for example, take an example of admin team. You might have an admin team of 3 people, and they may be responsible for requesting info, chasing info in, posting out accounts. Say if you had a lot of jobs, say if they had 100 tasks to do in a day or a week, they might just sit in the same room and they might say, right, I'm going to do this one, you do that one. There is very little benefit to ask them to actually allocate that job to themselves on Glide. So far better just to have the job held by the team, and then every member of the team, just to show the impact that has, what you would do is on their dashboard, rather than having jobs held, they would add the jobs held plus team jobs. And what that does is that would then list jobs that they are holding and jobs that are held by a team that they are a member of. So it would mean that if you had 4 people in your admin team and there are 100 jobs held by the admin team, they would all see those 100 jobs plus any jobs they are holding. And it just it makes it more efficient, essentially. So I've created that team. Now I'm going to go into Edit Workflow Systems. I'm going to drill into my VAT V2 system. And this all takes place on the Routes tab. So important to note, we are creating a single route workflow system. If you do have multiple route variations, everything we're doing here would be done individually for each route. So if we just scroll down, it's our creation step here where we'd like a workflow action. To create workflow actions, you have to just scroll down a bit further to the detailed editor and find the step. So this yellow one at the top that goes from job creation is our job creation step, and we will click create new action, and we're going to do set job holder, and you'll see the options you have here. We're going to hopefully use all of these options during the course of the demo. On this case, we're going to say admin team. Click save. So just to look at an example of that, if we were to go to Cairngorm, VAT V2, and just create the next job, the November 19 job, what we'll see if we go into that job is that the job is held by the admin team. On the widgets for any admin team members will show this job. If we were to go into here, we would see the November job is held by admin team. We could filter to admin team, so on and so forth. Interestingly there, by filtering to admin team, it's showing jobs held by the admin team or by members of the admin team. Okay, so that's the first bit done. Jumping back to our image, I can see that the next time we have a change is when the info receive button is clicked, we set to the preparer position if occupied or otherwise to the job pool. Great, okay. So back in the editor, and we're now looking for the info received button. So scroll down, and there it is. So we can see on the stage awaiting info, we have two buttons: info chased, doesn't go anywhere, and info received. So what we want to do here, and it's actually important, we're going to have two workflow actions here. It's actually important that you create them in this order. If you were to create them in the wrong order, you'd need to delete them and do it again. So the first one is going to set the job holder to our preparer position. Now this preparer position defaults to being active, on a workflow system, so it's there already. When we do our reviewer one in a minute, we don't have that, so we'll see an example of creating a new position. So let's say set job holder to preparer. Okay, so when we click the button, it's going to set the job to the preparer. But what if there isn't one? Well, what we can actually do then, we've specified that we'd like the job to go into the job pool. So if we click create new action, we can do set job holder if empty. This one will only be done if there is not already a job holder. And on this occasion, we're going to choose the pool. Okay, let's have a look at that in action. First things first, I want to go to edit system settings and just check activate pool screen. We're going to put that to yes. And all that does is it means in my workflows drop down, where I see my VAT V2 jobs, I now have a VAT V2 pool as well. This will list any jobs in the pool. So let's have another look at another example of that bit happening. So if we just find a VAT V2 job, maybe that November 19 one, we'll follow that job through. So it's on to request info. Note, importantly, there is absolutely no one, there is no preparer. So when we click info received, this button here, it's going to try and set it to the preparer, which is empty, so the job holder will be blank. Then it will read that second workflow action and go, job holder's blank, let's put it in the pool. So let's click that, and we'll see we're held by the pool. So what is the pool? Well, if we just go and look at it, we should see our job in there. There it is. The pool is designed to show jobs that are at a certain stage, more often than not, ready to go, but no one's allocated. And it's just helpful because, of course, if you just wanted to see jobs that were ready to go with no preparer, you could easily do that in a report anyway. But this allows you a couple of extra bits of functionality. First of all, if you were to make any comments on the job card, something like this, or if you were to make a comment on a particular stage here, like that, then the pool screen will show those notes, so that's pretty cool. Also, there is a take button. Now, this allows self-allocation of a job. So, say if you had 50 VAT clients, which quite small jobs, they didn't have a regular preparer, and you're not really that fussed about who does them. You might put them in the pool, and say if a member of the team had a spare day, and they wanted to know what to do, rather than needing to communicate with a manager to ask the manager to choose the most important job and allocate it, they can come to the pool screen. You can activate the pool screen for any of your workflow systems. It's also a combined pool. And jobs will be listed on here in the order they came to the pool. And also there's a take button. So a member of staff can click to take the job. And we actually have a special step in the editor, or rather we can create a special step in the editor to dictate what happens when they click that button. So we'll do that right now. So just to explain what you do there, you'd actually need to add a new step, and in the from and to, just choose pool. In the from, just choose taken from the pool. You don't need a to. This doesn't actually change the stage of the job, so we'll just call this pool step. Okay, and we'll see that's just there, another special one. And we can do anything we like here. So typically what you would see is set job position to a user, you're going to set your preparer position to current user. And the current user means the person that's logged in. So when they click that button, the system will say, right, whoever clicked that button, they are the preparer. So that can be the first thing you do. And then secondly, you can say, right, make the job holder the preparer. Okay, so if we now go and look at this job, it's currently in the pool and there's no preparer. But if I am logged in as Ben Norwell, if I go to the pool now and click take, it's going to set me, the logged in user, as the preparer, and it's going to make me the job holder. The only other thing I've seen done on the special pool step is perhaps you could set a target date. Obviously we're covering that in video 3, I think. And you can also auto progress a step. So fairly rare to see that, but you might have a job stage called job is in the pool. And you obviously wouldn't want it to be in the pool when it's taken from the pool, so you can have a workflow action that says click this button. So yeah, that's the pool. Okay, so jumping back to the reference image, the next thing we're doing is when we click job started, we want to insist on there being someone in the preparer position, and if the person is entered at that point, we would want to make them the job holder. So to do this, we're actually going to jump to the editor, and this is the first occasion where we need to ensure we have a job field. So just looking at our job card here, we currently have absolutely no job fields whatsoever. We need one. We need a job field to show our preparer position, because although we can see it here, we can't change it. So let's create a job field, and the job field type, so I've come to the Elements tab, and the job field type is job position. I'm going to call it, typically, of course, it just has the same name as the job position, but it doesn't have to. Order is just the order the fields are listed in. As this is my only one, it doesn't really matter. Initial value, really important for job positions. This is where, when a job is created, any of these job fields will check the initial value setting to see if they should automatically be populated. As I mentioned before, you can choose from your client, partner, client manager, or any custom fields. So what we'll do in a moment is we'll actually create one on this workflow system, and we'll come back and set that. Visibility on the job card, I'm going to have that as visible. The only time you wouldn't is if you wanted a job field to benefit from the initial value, but you didn't want people to be able to change it on the job card, so you'd have it set to totally hidden. Really important, job staff link, just tell the system which job position, so this is preparer, you want it to be seeing. So click create, and that will have also been automatically added to our route. There it is. Job fields and deadlines, when you create them on the Elements tab, you can then obviously have them on some routes and not other routes. They will automatically be added to all routes, and you can delete them if you don't want them on there. We'll get back to our job card and hit refresh. We'll now see we've got a job field for the preparer position, so we can easily change it. And it's also important for the concept of blocking. So let's actually, what I want to do is obviously we demonstrate the whole pool thing there. I want to actually make it so there's no preparer, and also I want to make it so there's no job holder. Interestingly, currently I have to go into edit job to do that. That's limited to manager or partner users. So you can actually do the same. You can actually have a job field, and I thoroughly recommend you do this on basically every workflow system. We can actually go back to Elements and follow that exact same thing, exact same process we did a moment ago to create a field called something like current job holder. Okay, I'm going to put this as, let's say 20. It'll go below my preparer one. I'm not going to do an initial value here, because actually on our workflow route, we've got a job creation workflow action that sets the initial value of the job holder. That's better than doing it here, because if I have two routes, it means I can do it differently on each route. Job staff link, this one's at the bottom, we'll see job holder for that V2. And that's been automatically added to my route. So if we now refresh the job card, we'll see we've got a field for preparer and a field for job holder. Means I can really easily change it, and I'm going to put that to empty. Okay, so We're on the stage to start a job. Job started button. All right, my objective here is to say, right, you are not allowed to click that unless there is a preparer. And the reason for that is that when you click it, I'm going to set the job holder to be preparer. So, you know, you wouldn't want to do set job holder to preparer, and there isn't one because your job holder is going to be blank. So let's go ahead and do that. If we scroll down to our job started button, we do two things. We're going to say, first of all, traffic light. It basically just means we're going to grey out the button, make it impossible to complete based on this criteria, and go for field completed. And we'll now see we've got our fields here. I'm going to do preparer. So just jumping back to our job card, hit and refresh, you can see, oh, greyed out, impossible to click, and it's saying, look, you need to fill out preparer. If I fill out the preparer, it's instantly going to be okay to click. And the second thing we'll do here is say create new action, set job holder to the preparer position. Save. So preparer is Ben Noah. If I click job started, there we go. Back at Ben Noah in the job holder. Excellent. Okay, looking back at the image, what happens next? Handed for review. We go to a reviewer position. Okay, it's our very next button. There it is. So this is interesting because we actually need to set up the reviewer position. We come into edit system settings. Here we see 16 slots we've got. As we mentioned at the start of the video, partner and manager, they will automatically populate technically slot 1 for partner, slot 2 for manager. So even if you're not using the partner manager, just ignore these slots. You want to do your custom stuff down here. So let's choose any of these. Let's choose slot 10 and call it reviewer. And we need to make it active. So just choose any of the active settings here. The difference between optional and compulsory is still in development. That's irrelevant. There is a difference between filter and filter plus sheet. If we just go for filter, then what it means is that on the jobs report here, you're going to get a primary filter for your position. There we go, reviewer. And if you were to go for filter plus sheet, where are we? Then it means that on this same report, you're going to get your filter plus a result column for reviewer here, which of course on a user by user basis they can decide if they want that or not. They don't have to. Okay, so we've got our reviewer position. Now in my scenario here, people aren't going to be allocating this manually. They're going to be choosing who's reviewing the job. So I definitely want a job field. I want to be able to do this on the job card. So this is, again, just replicating what we did earlier. I'm going to say reviewer, display order 30. Now, I'm not going to do an initial value. Okay. Job staff link reviewer. The reason I didn't do an initial value is because with the initial value setting, if you were to change, if I did their initial value, I mean in my notes I said I wanted to default to manager, but I want to be able to change it and for it to become independent of the manager setting. If I use that initial value setting, if the manager were changed, it would say, right, that job position is linked, I'm going to change that as well. I think we had an example earlier in the video where I set Joanne as the manager and it automatically said, right, on active jobs, she's the manager. If we did come in here and say initial value is client manager, it would also be changed, and we don't want that. But we do want the position to default to the manager. So the way we can do that is by coming down to our job creation step and saying, right, let's have an action. Let's set job position to a user. Let's set our reviewer position to equal whoever is the manager. That's just a way of achieving exactly the same in a way that does not link them forevermore, essentially. Let's have a look at this on our example. Just going to hit refresh. Now, I'm going to actually create the next quarter here because, of course, we're setting this on job creation, so it's going to make the example a bit more thorough. So if we create our February 20 job, and have a look at that, we'll see we've got a manager, and we'll see the reviewer is defaulted to the manager. Okay, so we're going to whiz through, going to say, so jobs created, and we're with the admin team. Info requested. When we click info received, I think we do the thing where we go to the preparer, or if it's not set, we go into the pool. So we're in the pool. Previously, we actually went into the pool and self-allocated it, but this time we're going to demo the other way. So it's saying, yep, you need to have a preparer before you can click this. So I'm going to make the preparer. In this case, I'll go for Ben. I'm going to click job started to change to Ben. Okay, so when we're going to click handed for review, let's just see whether we did this bit or not. Right, handed for review. I'm going to do the same as we did here. There should be someone in the reviewer position because I've defaulted it to my manager, and no doubt my intention is to have a manager on every client. But what if there isn't? Just in case there isn't, I'm going to do the traffic light thing again. We'll do traffic light reviewer. Okay, so exactly as before, you can't click this button until there's a reviewer. And by the way, the reason you do this bit is just in case they get to that point, they are blocked, they enter a manager at that point in time, you then would say set job holder to reviewer. Okay, so just refresh the job card. So we're allowed to click handed for review, and it will set the job holder to the reviewer, which is Joanne. Just to demo this, if we put it to not set, we would not be allowed to click it. So the reviewer defaulted to Joanne, but we can change that. This is where I should have a third user set up. Okay, as if by magic, I've created a new user, Ben Stokes. So the reviewer position defaulted to the manager, but let's say we've completed our VAT return, we need someone to review it, the manager's not here. Let's give it to someone else, and in this case we're going to give it to Ben. So when we then click handed for review, the job will be held by Ben. And the nice thing here is that we have Ben stored in this reviewer position separately to the manager Joanne. So even if that person were the same user, it means on a later stage in the job you can say, right, let's pass the job back to the reviewer, and it's going to go to the person that reviewed it. And you haven't compromised the knowledge of who was the manager on this job. This review stage might be a tiny bit of involvement, whereas the manager is responsible for the overall client relationship and lots of the other stages. So if you're running reporting on this at a later date, you might want to include in that report who the manager was. Like, for example, you might do some turnaround reporting and you want to group it by the manager. We don't want to suddenly skew that data just because Ben's reviewed this job. So although a bit of an advanced example, it's a nice one to include just to show how to do that. Okay, so what happens next when the job's on to review job? Okay, so we had OK to send, went back to the admin team, reviewed issues clear, went back to the preparer. So let's go ahead and do those two next. So OK to send is create new action, set job holder, admin team, and with that one, that's it. The admin team had the job for the rest of it, so we don't need any other workflow actions here. We've reviewed issues to clear. We'll do create new action, set job holder, preparer. Now, earlier on in the workflow, we had a traffic light that said you cannot continue unless preparer is filled in. So we kind of know that there is a preparer. I mean, technically, someone could set it to nobody, and if you're worried they might do that, you'd simply add in the traffic light again. But as a rule, when I'm doing these, I only tend to have the traffic light on the first instance of setting the holder to that position. I then just assume that the preparer is still set, but absolutely no harm whatsoever in accompanying this with a traffic light field completed preparer. You know, if it's always completed, no one's ever going to see the traffic light, so it's going to just operate in the background as a good check. Clearly you don't need that with Teams. There's no similar concept there, because that is not a position. Okay, so that completes our example. So let's go ahead quickly and just demo these ones here. So if we said there's issues to clear, the job holder is currently Ben. It's going to Ben Stokes BS. It's going to go back to Ben Norwell BN. So let's click that. There we go. That's done. And at some point Ben would have finished it, handed it for review, and it goes back to Ben Stokes. And at some point we say OK to send, and it goes back to the admin team. Okay, so no further changes. We would go through the rest of this job with it staying on the admin team. Just to link this back to the dashboards we were looking at earlier, when we created this example job, Joanne was linked automatically by virtue of being the manager, and she also started out as the reviewer as well. We had no preparer on this job by default, so the only user that would have seen this job in the linked widgets would have been Joanne. So we're not logged in as Joanne here, but on links she would have seen the jobs. At a certain point in the flow, we actually populated the preparer as Ben. So at that point, the job would have seen in linked widgets by both Joanne and Ben Norwell. And then further on, we set the reviewer as Ben Stokes. So at that point, both Joanne, Ben, and Ben would have all been seeing this job in any linked widgets, any widgets filtered to linked. Everyone on the Glide system would have seen this job at all times on the overall setting. And thinking of the jobs held, so initially the job was held by the admin team, so the job would have appeared in the jobs held widget for any members of the admin team, and then we have passed it between the preparer, the reviewer, and then eventually back to the admin team. So that job is going to, jump from Joanne's dashboard to Ben's dashboard to other Ben's dashboard. It's only held by one person at one time, so only one user will see it in their jobs held, with of course the exception of when it's held by the admin team. You could have in theory as many people as you like in that team, and when it's on a stage and held by the admin team, they would see it in the jobs held. So I'm hoping this video has got a bit longer than I planned, but we have covered quite a lot of example functionality there. We've done a few of the more advanced things to do with allocating jobs. Typically, you're probably going to find that your workflows are simpler than what we've done here today. And the nice thing about how we have the Glide template set up is, of course, you've got the partner field, you've got the manager field, and we always create a preparer position. So if I just go back to a job card, all of the Glide templates will have a preparer position. It will default to a regular preparer position, and we'll also have the job fields for both preparer and current job holder. So you'll see those on any of the template workflow systems. But here, that's a nice example just to cover off a lot of functionality. If you do have any queries whatsoever about this, just jump into the blue icon down in the bottom right corner here. You can search for all the content we have on this sort of, on this area. And you can also find all these articles in the Help Center. In particular, I draw your attention to the how-to and the positions, job holder, and the pool section. If you have any queries whatsoever, you can get in contact with us either by calling us at the office or fill out the contact, or back in the widget here, just click on the ask and you can fire up a conversation in here. We look forward to helping you. We'll be back next week with video 3, and at that point we're going to add in some deadlines. Obviously for this example it's going to be the VAT filing deadline, and we're also going to talk about target dates. Look forward to that one. Thank you.